Hello and welcome to CIO News. I am Khushbu Soni, your host with broadcast and editor-chief at CIO News. This is our exclusive fireside chat powered by Goto. It is a recorded session and will be available on our website, that is ciunews.co.in, and our CIO News LinkedIn handle. I'm very excited to invite our guest for today. We have Saurabh Gugnani, the Head Information Technology and Security at PeopleStrong. Saurabh is a result-oriented IT professional with 15 plus years of experience in IT services management and infrastructure services, service delivery, leadership, and has been working in various domains in IT. Right, he's been taking care of analyzing the information systems, evaluating end-user requirement, custom designing solutions, undertaking troubleshooting activities. He has a significant experience and expertise in the data centers technologies. And he's an enterprising leader with an uncompromising commitment to performance excellence and enduring bias for action in training and motivating team to maintain deliverables. A proactive executive with on skills in analyzing information system needs and evaluating user requirements, an effective communicator with excellent analytical and organizational skills. Saurabh, it is an absolute pleasure to have you today on this interview, and we're really looking forward to learn from your perspectives.
Sure, it's my pleasure, to be here and having this discussion with you, Khushbu and Triveni, and to give my thoughts to see the relevance. What I envision or what I see the ground challenges are the actual problems. Which OEMs like GoTo are here to solve for the organization in the same brackets of people. But yeah, happy to be here and share my thoughts, and maybe I'll get to learn something from Triveni to help me out on my business.
Awesome, awesome. Yes, and allow me to introduce Triveni Rabindraraj, the India sales head from Goto. Triveni has 20 plus years of experience across business development, strategic alliances, people management. Triveni has worked with brands such as Wipro, Dun& Bradstreet, City, and many more. Triveni, pleasure to have you again on this platform.
Thanks, Khushbu, and thanks, Saurabh. Really looking forward to learning from you as well. Looking forward to some great discussions today.
Sure.
Great. Great. So, to begin with, I wanted to put across my first question for you, Saurabh. I don't want to use the word pandemic, but I think that was something which was part of our lives for a very long time, and a lot of changes have happened post that. I wanted to understand how has your working changed in People Strong? Were there any significant changes in terms of the role, the kind of priorities that you've looked at post COVID from your role perspective?
Sure. So yeah, I call it as a pre-pandemic era or a post-pandemic era, right? I've been with enterprises all my life. Earlier, I am adapted to this, a new culture which is most prevalent in India as on today, to see that whether we can support people from home and do we have the right solutions. And I've seen, many organizations struggling with it. But because of my prior experience, I was able to get this done before the lockdown. And since then, it's been 2.5 years now. People have been working from home. Now, after 2.5 years, we are starting opening up as a hybrid structure, but that is the way we want to work forward. Yes, there were challenges earlier for sure, because organizations were not ready, one, for this kind of setup. Then it was all around tools. Do you have the right tools to sustain the business at that point in time? Because everybody was ensuring the BCPs that the business should run, and there were certain deviations being taken by people to offload something, sending some stuff at their places, making certain policy changes. How we operate as an organization. But all that been done and dusted. Then we have the roadmaps, which I wanted to do that, but this pandemic helped me out. And since last 1.5 years, 2 years, we have been making those changes, understanding the requirements of the people. And with the newer set, with people, bifurcated across, you know, like, within India or outside India. You have to understand the dynamics, you have to understand the requirements, and need to have the right tools to work it out. But yes, that is giving us more perspective to learn as a CIOs that what else can be done. But that has also helped us to ensure the business is up and running fine. And also this gives me a perspective, understanding the business more rather than being thinking from the IT side. I'm thinking more from the business side, and then I'm trying to implement a solution, which is helping me a lot because it solves their problem and it also curbs my requirement in terms of ensuring that I'm able to control their devices, ensuring that I'm able to work with them, ensuring that I'm able to give them the right platforms to work and all. So yeah,
Right.
those changes have been working from last
Yeah.
2 years.
Right. Awesome. And so while we understand that now the demand is for distributed workforce and this is the new culture that we're following, so to enable them, is your IT help desk fully empowered to provide the fast and efficient support for the current flexible way of working?
Yes, we have that for sure. So if I tell you in numbers, when this pandemic happened, we were an organization of nearly around 800 odd employees, and after 2 years, we are nearly around 2,500. So that's like 3x. But I've not added my people on the IT help desk. They still remain eight. So earlier, as a market parity, if I say that 100 is to one, now I'm serving nearly around 300 or 400 is to one. So the tools are there, which we have it. We change certain tools to help them out, but I bring in more and more automation uh, to the work so that their routine or mundane efforts are being cut down and they can work on something else. And that is how I'm driving it on the ground. But yes, to a large, we have tools on the ground to help my people, but we keep on looking into what best can be done to phase out something and to onboard something new to help them out.
Got it. Got it. Excellent. Triveni, you've been interacting with a lot of CIOs and tech leaders. How have you seen the evaluation process and what are the top priorities that have been considered for remote support solutions?
Sure. I think the importance of remote support has obviously gone multifold higher. Because of obviously the pandemic. Because pre-pandemic, like Saurav rightly said, the pre-pandemic era remote support was more of a nice to have tool. It was not like a must to have because we had most of our employees working in the perimeter of our offices, right? So we had our technicians who could physically sort of go to the workstation and help the employees, which obviously in pandemic kind of completely changed the game. So the importance of the secure the remote support went up that much higher. But also what we saw, right, the way the IT heads and CIOs evaluating the remote support tool earlier to today has completely changed, right? Because again, a very interesting point that Saurabh brought out, which I have also heard from some of the other IT heads that I've spoken to, is not adding more headcount onto the service desk team, whereas the employee count increasing, right? Because and also the other thing that I've also heard is the attrition being very very high, specifically in the tech agents, right? So that definitely calls a lot for automation, because you need to look at how can your tools not be people dependent because of so much of influx and outflux of the agents, right? So that's definitely number one. Dependency on low dependency on people, and it's more of looking at robust administration and reporting. But I think the number one thing that I have, and Sukhvinder also has seen this, is we have, I think the importance of security, right? That has gone up like crazy, as in, because obviously because of the malicious actors coming up, and then we've seen so many instances of data breaches, etc., phishing, and one thing that has emerged out very strongly is that almost 80% of the breaches have happened because of human element, right? It could be phishing, it could be compromised credentials, etc. And so the same thing holds good for remote supports as well, right? So how can, so that is one thing that we have always sort of been asked nowadays, which was not really, which was more like a check in the box kind of an activity in the past. The other thing is some other functionalities have become more core to a remote support tool, right? Like I think number one being the unattended access, because um, obviously because the fact that the number of technicians are lesser, it is important for the technicians also to sort of utilize the time even when the employees are on break, lunch breaks, etc., or off working hours. So that part of it is extremely critical. What we've seen is people asking for it more and more now. The other thing is multi-session handling capability. Again, this links to the fact that the technician count is lesser compared, or the proportion is lesser compared to the employees. A single technician needs to handle more than one session, right? Like for example, the tool that we have, there are, you can simultaneously have 10 different sessions at the same time. So that is something that we're seeing. The third one is collaboration, right? When I say collaboration, this is looking at how can an external, like say for example, we know that because of the pandemic and a lot of other factors, the supply chain disruption it was pretty bad, right? And because of that, it put a lot of pressure on equipments, like your hardware for that, for example, right? So like say for example, if you're having a Dell laptop, can a Dell technician join your own technicians on the same call to sort out the issue? So those kind of collaborations, or can your service desk agent bring in an L2 support on the same call? So this actually helps in for like the first time call resolution, those kind of parameters, which is very critical for IT heads like Saurav. And then finally, I think administration. When I say administration, the kind of controls that the admin need to have it, and because security is so much of an importance, who can, who should access what machines, who should not access what machines. Admin needs to have a complete view of all the activities that's happened on a particular call, recorded sessions, audit trails. These are something that becomes that we've seen taking center stage nowadays.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Fantastic. And you emphasized a lot on security, right? Security being one of the top priorities across organizations. So, sort of my question is, what are the standards by which an IT support tool should adhere in terms of security?
So in terms of an IT standards, if I take as a simple as it can be, we should not be having an open source tools, to be very upfront, because certain times we try to have an open source tools coming down, from any kind of a downloadable site to take remote controls and stuff like that. But you don't know, which hacker or which has done some crawlers behind it. You don't know about it, and it just takes one unwanted tool, and that to be downloaded on an IT technician's machine who has got access to most of the peripheral stuff of the organization. And if that is done, you are down. So ideally, no non-compliant tool on the machine. All the tools which you are using should be compliant. One is from security perspective, other is from software asset management, which is basically the compliance in case you have an unwanted tool, and if any of the OEMs came to know about it that you're using their trial version in the production environment, that can also lead to legality issues for the organization. So yeah, this is all basic. You can't have unwanted open source tools, and you can't have tools without any purchases to be used in the production environment.
Got it. Got it. Um, Triveni, my next question is, what are the biggest challenges before and after adopting a remote support solution?
Yeah,
Because I think there are challenges. One at the beginning for evaluation, and then second is after
yeah.
the implementation. Right?
Yeah, yeah. Just to add on to Saurav's point, right? The open source,
Yeah.
I think, if you ask me, and anybody like me who's selling to the IT heads, one of the biggest competition that we have all seen is open source tools, right? And the other challenge that we have seen is that the using meeting tool like the one that we are on currently, GoToMeeting, or any other, Zoom or Teams, for remoting in purpose, right? Now that also that also sort of poses a big threat to the security system, because obviously the model that or the architecture built around a meeting tool does not serve that purpose. When the companies go for audit, it does not show an audit trail, it does not show file transfers, and so many other things. So coming
Right.
back to the pre and post challenges, right, to your question, I think one thing that I mean is common to any application or any SaaS-based application is the usage or the adoption of it, right? I think that is what is biggest issue. I mean, be it in any tool you talk for that matter, the every company struggles with the adoption part of it. So what we try to do specifically is we try to see how to address that issue by sort of in the pre-evaluation stage itself. It's good if we can have some you know top three KPIs which we will drive, which are proportional to the return on investment for Saurabh and IT heads, etc. So those need to be very critically spoken about right from the POC stages, because then the POC environment can sort of evaluate those factors, and in fact do a sign off before that, even before we get into implementing it, right? So that's first and the foremost thing. So one thing that we have common thing that we have seen in remote support tools is KPIs like your first call resolution, KPIs like your average handling time. So these have definitely we these have been one of some of the top KPIs that we have seen organizations drive specifically for the service desk teams. The second thing is, then now when we talk about the adoption, right, always having a customer success team to help onboarding and training, because the first 1 month becomes very critical, right? Because the technicians may be using like an open source tool or any other tool, and it's all about comfort and convenient of using that tool, right? So there will be a lot of resistance for using those tools from that perspective, right? It's very simple. If you are an Android user, no matter how good your iOS technology is, you're still very the stickiness to Android is higher because you're used to that platform. So the same thing applies here as well, right? So having a very well structured onboarding plan for the customers, at least 3 months of hand holding, I think will help the adoption issue. And after post 3 months as well, I think vendors like us, we need to sort of go back to the IT heads and present to them on the usage, on what kind of sessions have been done, what kind of features are being utilized, underutilized, which probably can help them with increasing their ROI. Those kind of insights, I think we as an OEM, we need to take up that accountability and responsibility to transfer that knowledge to the IT heads.
Great, great. I think the conversation is going very insightful. But my one last question before we close today's interview, considering the time constraint, is for you, Saurabh. Having a tool with the right priorities is, met is one half of the challenge, and the other half is driving enough adoption. And Triveni also spoke about that, right, to meet the ROI standards. So, what are your driving forces when it comes to achieving an optimal ROI?
Sure. So, Triveni answered to a large that it is, because we are also a SaaS-based product, right? We also sell our product to, organizations, but, challenges which we heard from the CHROs or the HR heads is that, the adoption is not, pretty high, right? And if the adoption is not very high, the tool will die its own death, right? So
Right.
we have to work it out. So if I'm onboarding a tool or if I'm onboarding anything, I'll make sure that all the business functions are connected. I make sure that when I'm in the reviews with my leadership or my board, I keep emphasizing what are we changing. So they are connected to the near
Right.
sets, how the technology is gonna help them in their day-to-day life. right? Because as she just said, there are multiple options as of now. I can use Teams, I can use Zoom. Everybody has multiple platforms to work across.
Right.
But what is
Right.
the actual right solution for us, subset of a requirement that has to be told to people to use it, and that is how your return on investment will be high. Because then again, the CFOs will be questioning you that sort of ये तो ये भी करता है, तुम ये क्यों कर रहे हो, ये इसकी क्या requirement है. That thing will come from a person whose KRA is to drive cost, right? He will
Correct.
say that this will
Yeah.
work for me. But you have to understand what is the right solution for a purpose to be driven through, and there you have to take foot up and make sure that people are using it. If they have any technical requirements, make them have go through training. We send them flyers, we send them emails, but we keep emphasizing and telling them what we all have, so that the adoption is there and the ROI on the investment. We can let the CFO and the board know that it is pertinent for us to have this tool from all aspects for which we have checked this through, and it is good for us to have it.
Right. Great. Uh, Fantastic conversation and very, very insightful pointers, Triveni and Saurabh. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your perspectives and your learnings and your experience through this platform. It was a pleasure to host you both. Thank you once again.
Thanks. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much,
Thanks a lot.
Khushbu. Thank you, Saurabh.
Yeah. Thank you, Triveni. Thank you.